In this 25th year of Doctor Who, I, the Cyber Leader, demand that you be generous in your support for public television. That would be excellent.
As I've said many times before, I am a huge fan of the Cybermen. I just love the Cybermen in the classic series. And, it doesn't really matter to me what period of time these stories take place in. I just love them. And so anytime I have an opportunity to talk about them, I love to do so. This story, Silver Nemesis, that we're going to be talking about is, the 25th anniversary story, obviously part of season 25. Also, it's kind of scary because now we're heading towards the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. That's next year. That's knocking on the door. That's frightening because I was there, during the 20th anniversary, 25th, and it's not really a statement on Doctor Who, more of a statement on my own age. But then Silver Nemesis, as a VHS, was released during the 30th anniversary of the series, and that was a great year for VHS releases because they really tried to make it pretty special. That they had stuff like the color John Pertwee stories. A couple of them came out during the 30th anniversary. You had Trial of a Time Lord that came out. You had the Dalek tin that had Remembrance of the Daleks and the Chase in there. And then also, apart from Silver Nemesis, you also had the release for The Invasion, which was really cool because this was the first time that we really got an incomplete story that like all the existing episodes put together. And it was really cool. It was really cool that was made available to us. So it was a great year. Now, as far as what we're going to be talking about here with Silver Nemesis is that it's an extended version of the story. This version was never broadcast on BBC One. In turn, because of this VHS release, the broadcast version of Silver Nemesis was never released commercially until the DVD set came out. Now, as always, if I get something wrong or you want to share a comment, let me know how you got this story, or you don't like this story, which I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of you out there that's going to do that. Please send me an email, send me a note. A number of you have done so. A number of you put comments in YouTube. I don't respond to everybody. I just haven't had time, but I greatly appreciate them. I read them. I love hearing everyone else's stories. So thank you so very much for doing that. And also, like I mentioned before, I am on Patreon now. So if you like what I'm doing, if you have a couple extra spare bucks, please go ahead and sign up. We got some awards for people that sign up. We release stuff early, especially made content for Patreon. It's a lot of fun. I love doing it, and I hope that you'd consider supporting me because, like I said, it may not look it, but there is actually a lot of work that goes into these, and also the other ones, the DVD DVD reviews and whatnot. So please consider doing so. Now, as far as Silver Nemesis on VHS goes, as far as I'm concerned, I think back to way back actually to when Trial of a Time Lord ended on PBS over here for us in KTCA. We talk about KTCA quite a bit. And with KTCA, I think we got Trial coming up, and I think it ended in 88 or something, because I think we started getting it in either late 87 or 88. And something odd happened. We got in March of 1988, not the entire season 24 with Sylvester McCoy, but we got his first story, Time in the Ronnie. And that's interesting because that was part of pledges and stuff, and they threw that out earlier. And I'm not quite sure why they did that. I know that everyone will have a very unique perspective on whether or not Time in the Ronnie should be seen by itself. And I'm not dissing anyone who likes it or doesn't like it. I just know that it's a divisive. But it was the only time that we had Sylvester McCoy on PBS until late '89. Now you might be like, well, what's the difference? That doesn't seem too long. Well, considering McCoy started in '87, so we didn't get Sylvester McCoy over here until season 26 was running over in the UK, and then it just was a straight run through. So if we don't have a way to get episodes, a lot of us would have to have waited a long time to get McCoy to be able to see his stories. And I'm sure, once again, because I know there's a lot of people who are not fans of his era. I personally am. But, I know a lot of people are just like, well, who cares? Who needs Sylvester McCoy? To me, personally speaking, especially when you get to season 25, I think it's very much a breath of fresh air for the series. And it also has a lot of great memories for me, getting into tape trading, getting into the university, meeting a lot of like-minded fans, and that stuff really is very important to me. It was a lot of fun. It was a great period of my life. Now, another thing that was unique, not only to the Silver Nemesis release, but just a very unique piece on its own, there was a public television network called New Jersey Network, and it covered off on a lot of stations in that area of the United States. They had been doing documentaries on Doctor Who since the mid-'80s, starting with Doctor Who's Who, and having a couple others. But this was the biggest one yet, because what happens is that Eric Luskin, who is the producer of it and also the host, he goes over to the UK and they document the making of a Doctor Who story. And it's the making of Doctor Who. And it was a big deal over in the US for the PBS stations, because it was a really good way of watching Doctor Who being made. And having just rewatched it lately, as we look through this wonderful release, I was really taken by how much of the process we are walked through, from everything from costume to music to shooting to some editing. It's a real, and rehearsals. It's a real interesting take on all of that stuff, and it was pretty phenomenal. And it was the thing of, it's just, it was a really eye-opener. The funny thing about it, though, when that came out and watching it, and it's like, oh, this is cool, I love it. As much as I said I love the McCoy era, at the same time, I was also kind of like, oh, I wish that, what if they were able to do like the making of the 5 Doctors? What if they're able to do the making of, insert just about any story? Because like, this is new stuff. I mean, it's like, I want to see how the stuff I'm really familiar with, I want to see how that's made. Now you jump forward a number of years, and I feel like that's the same way now, that I look back, and now I'm looking at, wow, what a great time capsule to look back at the making of Silver Nemesis, because we really have a very unique perspective on how that story was put together. I wonder if there are any footage that still exists that wasn't put in the documentary. But regardless, this was a real wonderful piece, and I think that this is one of the only people who had created a fan video back in the day, back in 1989, and we parodied Eric Luskin. And I think that that's really fun. And right now, we're going to have, I wanted to do this. I wanted to make sure I can include him in here. I want to include for you right now my quick interview with Eric Luskin about the making of Doctor Who. I have here with me Eric Luskin, and many of us Doctor Who fans, especially PBS in the 80s, would recognize you for your work doing the Doctor Who documentaries for New Jersey Network. And we're going to talk a little bit about all of that today. I'm doing a video on the VHS release of Silver Nemesis. Mm-hmm. And so that's top of mind at the moment for me. And what I really think is, fantastic about it, obviously, is the documentary, The Making of Doctor Who. And, now I don't know if you follow Doctor Who at all in any capacity, but the releases that come out now, the Blu-ray releases, everything, they have a documentary basically on everything from what did they eat at, for during lunch, during the recording sessions. I mean, stuff that you'd never imagine that we would have documentaries about. But back in 1988, here you are, not even UK, and you guys are going out to the UK and you're documenting the making of current Doctor Who. I mean, obviously, the first question is how did that even come together?
Gosh, it's funny, Greg, because the whole thing that happened with New Jersey Network back in the day was so organic and so unplanned, and so accidental that I think that that's part of the, you use the word je ne sais quoi. One of my favorite expressions professionally as I went on down the road was this: zeitgeist is not a business plan. You just don't know when something, whether it's in the science fiction realm or the drama realm or documentary or even, in the musical realm, is going to somehow reach people across the board on a level that creates something that you just cannot plan for. At the time I was, I think, a production assistant, working out of the programming department, which was kind of unusual. Most of the production assistants worked out of the production unit. So I had a lot of background in programming and was conversant with what was going on. I think they licensed the program from BBC Lionheart at the time. And Al was pretty good friends with one of the executives at BBC Lionheart.
You've had to create a cachet of like you're doing these documentaries. I mean, if the first thing NGN wanted to do was do a making of Doctor Who, I don't think you would have had probably a whole lot of luck with that. But you created like a resume of like you all have built yourself up with this.
Sure. And so I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, if as an inexperienced producer, if I'd picked up the phone and called the president of Lionheart and said, "Hey, I want to do a documentary about Doctor Who," I would have been shown the door pretty quick. But because we had two things going in our favor, at least, one was we'd accumulated a variety of an aggregation of work that we could show them.
Did you have your, like, everybody who worked on that documentary, were they all US based? Did you bring everybody over, or did you hire
crew? No, not at all. We hired freelance crew in the UK. My director, I'm pretty sure for most of that stuff, was a very fine director, a woman named Winifred Chisholm. Mm-hmm. Freddie went over, I went over. There was an executive producer who went over, and that was kind of it. We were free to kind of roam about and make whatever arrangements we could make. And we were working with, there was some sort of public relations person within the BBC that was helping us with the internal stuff that we were doing. And as far as, the interviews and things with much of the cast, I already knew them. We knew them. We knew JNT. We knew all of the doctors. We knew many of the companions. We didn't necessarily know the kind of the backstage people or the technicians or the directors, but that part of it's really easy because they do that all the time. They'll sit down, give you 5 minutes of exactly what you need, and then go off and do the rest of their day.
When I watched it for the first time in years, getting ready for all this, I was really surprised with the overall like completeness of covering the production really from start to finish. There's stuff that I just forgot about, that, you really, you went through the three stages of production, and it was very well rounded. And I don't know why I didn't think it was. I'm not saying it wasn't. I didn't think it wasn't, but you look at it like, this is really a good snapshot of the making of this story, I thought.
Well, what I thought was really amazing was, and again, I think it's because we had the relationships with these people, but with Silver Nemesis, things were not necessarily going well
Right.
when we were there. And Sylvester, I remember, was incredibly frustrated at one point. I did an interview with him up on the roof at the BBC, and he's like completely frantic and over the top with all the stuff that's going on. And I think that what we were lucky enough to capture with a lot of that stuff was what was really happening. And there was, again, we were this rogue little unit, and nobody was telling us what we could shoot or couldn't shoot or could use in the edit or couldn't use in the edit. So, once you get that stuff, your creative side, as a in quotes documentarian, is like free to put it together in the way that you think is going to be most interesting. And we just had the freedom and the luck to do that. When you talk about the Silver Nemesis thing, I always think of Wimbledon, because it was right around the time of Wimbledon when we were over there shooting. And the guy who was the baddie, I don't remember the actor's name, sadly.
Anton Diffring.
Yes, Anton. Anton absolutely had tickets to go to Wimbledon. And so he was very concerned about the production schedule because he was heading to Wimbledon, and everything, apparently he got there and everything went fine. But yeah, Anton, man, he was a character, and literally, a character actor of just incredible renown.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to be able to sit there and watch these people work was fascinating.
There really isn't any sort of spin. Everything now has a spin to it of some kind. Perhaps the narrative of the making of Doctor Who is JNT going to leave or not? And how was he? What was he like?
Oh, just terrific. I've said this a couple times, but here you have this renowned BBC producer who's done all kinds of things before Doctor Who and in addition to, and I show up in London in his office and he's treating me like an equal. It was just, I don't know why, I don't know how, but now clearly John was trying to get his spin on that story out there.
Yeah.
But it was part of the story, and that was fine. It never occurred to me to go to BBC management to get, a balanced view of, it's like, no, that's not what this is about. This is for the fans. And, I'm not Ken Burns, certainly, I'm just trying to have fun with this opportunity that I've been given and try not to screw it up is that's what Freddie and I kept saying is, oh my God, this is amazing. Let's not screw it up. But John was great. And, I was at his home. I was able to interact with people in his personal circle as well as his professional circle for the limited time that I was there. Were they putting on a show? Well, when the cameras weren't there, probably not. He just struck me as an incredibly, driven person who had been doing something for a very long time and clearly was tired.
Yeah.
Doing things, being a showrunner, being a producer, what have you, it's exhausting. And this is, back in the 80s when it was nowhere as simple as it is now. Not that it's simple, but John was great. And, his goal was to keep Doctor Who going.
Beyond him.
Yeah. absolutely.
And the thing about John was that he had that kind of that foresight of being able to know, like, he saw it, he knew that it wasn't just a BBC television program. It was part of the world heritage, in a sense, of, as far as like its outreach, that something that you were doing, the making of Doctor Who, would be it would be good for the program. It would be good for people to, he saw it as not for the viewers of the UK, since no one in the UK really saw it until it came out in VHS. He saw it as a great way to promote the program.
Yeah, from what I recall, I would agree with that. And, I think it was also probably kind of fun for the folks in the production team to have, an outsider there running around. And, we were doing our best to not, interfere with anything that was happening. So, in a way, when you're into the routine of shooting, show after show, series after series, here you have this thing that's just making it a little bit different. Your day isn't the same old day because these stupid Americans with their camera are running around. Mm-hmm. So, I think it kind of cut both ways. If we had been there for another 3 or 4 days, we might have started to smell like yesterday's fish. But for it was just about the right amount of time in the right circumstances.
How long were you there for? Do you remember?
As we're talking, I can't really remember. I think we had 3 days of shooting, maybe 4. And I probably was there a little bit longer because I had some friends and stayed. I think Freddie and the executive producer went back before I did. But I think we only had like 3 days of shooting. I remember we got to shoot a rehearsal, and that was pretty cool, being in the rehearsal rooms. We tried to replicate that with some of the Doc Martin stuff, and we couldn't because of the timing of everything. And we were shooting in Greenwich, and we were shooting at Arundel. And I know we had little bits and pieces in there somewhere, but that's what I recall at the moment. And the shame of it is, when I left New Jersey Network 112 years ago, I should have made photocopies of the shooting notes and all of that stuff that I had, but of course I didn't, and it was all mostly either typed or handwritten or something, and I left that for my successors. And who knows where that stuff is now, if it even exists anymore. So that's one of the things I regret. One of the things that is pretty cool, and I can show it to you if I haven't already, is I have a sort of a scrapbook of photos and things from those shoots. Cool. I've got some pictures of me interviewing some London punks on the street, with the spikes and all that sort of stuff. And we're having a conversation about Doctor Who, and it's like, this is odd, but it was beautiful.
The production person inside me, my heart is palpitating when you're seeing the finished product, and you saying that you had maybe 3-4 days, even if you had 5 days. I'm thinking in my mind everything that you shot for that, which is all, like you said, the rehearsals, some of the shooting, like the location shooting, plus all the interviews, let alone you did a number, and I have that on a VHS reel somewhere, of all like the pledge drive, sort of like, David Banks as cyber leader and character saying, donate to PBS or you'll be,
right, exterminated, right.
And it's just like that. That is a lot of work that got done in a short period of time.
Well, ever thus, and I don't care if you're talking 20 years in the future or now, or 20 years in the past, when you are in a production environment, you just go, 100%. I'd like to say 110%, but there's no such thing. And everyone was working their tails off. We had a hired cameraman, a hired audio man. They were superb. And, but one of the things as we're talking about this, Greg, that flips into my head is that I was arrogant enough at that point to know that if I was fronting the program and I was there, I could write almost anything I needed to make almost anything work. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, if you're in a shooting environment and you're working with a front person, whether it's a host or this or that or the other thing, they may or may not be there when you're putting the program together, and then you're just using it as another element of something that you've shot. When you are the talent and you are the producer, you're in a different position. And if you can write, and if you can have the skills that I apparently had, you can then take that jigsaw puzzle in the post-production process and maneuver it in a way that can work, which is much harder to do if you're not all of those serving all of those functions on the production. So I think, in a way, for better or worse, that's one of the ways we were able to make these things work later on, was that we had the time. There was no particular rush in getting them out, although I think there was with Silver Nemesis because of the premiere time and all of that stuff. But we generally had the physical time to look at what we had done and talk about it and say, how does it make sense to put this together, as opposed to turning it around in a week and having it be on the air 8 days later. So I think that makes all the difference.
Jump ahead to 2000 something, I think it's 2010. Silver Nemesis is on DVD. It's not released on there. I'm assuming that enough time has passed that it's probably, and I know that this isn't your world anymore, but probably enough time has passed that it would be a legal nightmare to probably get it onto something like that again.
Certainly legal complications. I mean, by 2010, I was long gone from NJN, and honestly, I don't remember when NJN ceased to be the original and then was kind of downsized and now is run and managed through NET 13. But at a certain point in time, all of those assets that were at NJN began to be harder to track. Let's put it that way. And the supporting documentation and all of the other things. I don't recall whether the rights to what we shot were owned in perpetuity, or whether there was a particular period of time. Certainly the actors probably and others would have needed to be paid, and it probably would have been a bit of a legal undertaking. I don't know that it was insurmountable, but it may have been that the people who were issuing Silver Nemesis at the time just either didn't know about it or didn't care about it, and thought it was going to sell on its own without the additional bonus extra, the making of. I don't know, but in theory, it could have been done.
So also, one of the things about this, the purpose of stuff like this, as much as I'd like to pretend that creating a documentary about the making of Doctor Who was because the fans would love it, well, we would love it, and that is a consideration. But at the same time, one of the things that we find out is as we talked about, those pledge drives. The pledge drives is what brings money into the station. It's what gets people to be members of the station. And when you're a member of the station, that means that you're help funding programming. And a big chunk of the money comes from member support. And it's, not too dissimilar from a license fee, except that you're not forced to do it. If you believe in the programs, and it doesn't have to be new programs, it could be like, I love Doctor Who being on Channel 2. I loved the Britcoms being on there, like Are You Being Served and Keeping Up Appearances, whatnot. I will support them by pledging during those programs and let them know I'm doing this because I'm a big Doctor Who fan. And that was the hope that meant that more money would be going to buy new Doctor Who. KTCA was very good with that. But not everyone was. And there came a point that Doctor Who became, non-sustainable for Channel 2. But it was always, that was the point of it. And, like you said, my money did my talking. So as time went on and the shows that I loved were no longer being put on KTCA, I stopped supporting them. It's as simple as that. Not because I hate them or not because they're not doing something right, but because they're simply not running the stuff that I want to watch. And it also doesn't help that, in the world, and I'm looking over at the billions of DVD shelves that I have, you have it all there. You don't quite need it as much anymore. So a lot of times have changed. But these shows would come, and you wouldn't watch them all in one hit. There'd be these pledge breaks, as we talked about before, and those pledge breaks simply gave people time to talk about joining, and they'd show some stuff. And we talked about this with at least with, I think, the Trial of a Time Lord video. And it's really interesting how, even as a kid, first of all, I didn't want to miss anything, but I would just keep watching. It would just always interest me that during, they would stop the tape of the master program they're running and then cut in and try to get people to put money. And they have these, you would see them, the bank of callers or the people answering the phones. And I've done that on a number of occasions for Channel 2, answering the phones and trying to sign people up during Doctor Who. It was a lot of fun. It always was a lot of fun.
Dematerialize and travel through time and space with the authentic Doctor Who disappearing TARDIS mug. This 8-ounce China mug is adorned with the official Doctor Who logo and the thermochromic TARDIS. You control the power to make the TARDIS vanish by filling the mug with your favorite hot drink. The TARDIS will reappear with time or instantly by filling it with something cold and frosty. The Doctor Who disappearing TARDIS mug is an essential addition to any Whovians collection. Available to new and upgrading members at the $60 membership level. Allow 6 weeks for delivery after final payment.
As far as, you look at the VHS for this, and there are a few things, first of all, like we said, this is an extended version of the program. The documentary on here is slightly cut. There are just a couple pieces that were Eric Sayward at the time he blocked. It was on the broadcast version, but not on the release of this. So I had to pull out my off-air recording of this from Channel 2 and kind of see. And it doesn't change a thing, right? It doesn't change anything at all. But it is worth pointing out that it's cut, and that was at the time that Eric Sayward was not getting along with anybody to do with the Doctor Who range, especially if J&T was still involved with it.
Every time they reappear, there are subtle and closely followed variations in the ridges on their hairdryers and the piping on their suits, even how many fingers they appear to have on each hand. And one feels they are changing to keep pace with our own evolving memories of just how terrible they used to be when they first appeared.
Time Lord, but they're forbidden to interfere.
This one calls himself the Doctor and does nothing else but interfere.
Emotions, love, pride, hate, fear. Have you no emotions, sir?
It was in this regenerated form that he confined the Cybermen to their ice tomb on Telos.
I imagine you have orders to destroy me.
And as this, he defeated us in our attempt to destroy Volga, the planet of gold.
You've no home planet, no influence, nothing. You're just a pathetic bunch of tin soldiers skulking about the galaxy in an ancient spaceship.
I did not see any of these men in the cave.
It appears he has regenerated again. But whatever his form, he must be found and destroyed.
A feat that no Cyberman has been able to accomplish.
As I was going through stuff, I noticed on another tape, as I was transferring stuff for this video, I had a tape of all of these pledge drive commercials. And what that is you get like somebody attached to a show or something, might be even like Big Bird, and saying, with donations like yours, I can get a new nest or something like that. But when they did it on location at Arendelle Castle, when they were shooting there, the scene that all the people trying to get in, and those were all like celebrities like Nicholas Courtney and Fiona Cumming and Peter Moffat. And so they got all of these people, and it's what you see at the beginning with the cyber leader wanting you to join. It would be excellent if you do so. That would be played during these pledge drives.
Hello, my name's Peter Moffat. I'm another director of Doctor Who. I started off with Tom Baker on State of Decay, and during my various selection of stories, I had the 5 Doctors, which was to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Doctor Who. So I now have great pleasure in saying happy birthday for the 25th, and asking you at the same time to be just so generous in your support for public television. It's something really worthwhile. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fiona Walker, playing Lady Painfort, and I wish you a very happy 25th anniversary for Doctor Who. And please be generous in your support of public television. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Courtney, and I play the Brigadier in Doctor Who, as you may know. I'm just down here helping them out in this story called Nemesis. I'd like you to be very generous in your support for public television. Keep watching it, because the more you keep watching it, the better it'll be for all of us, and for you too. Thank you.
You know, one of the things that is a real piece of interest for me, you know, is like getting these was great. But like I said, and the reason why I said it, you know, we just saw Time and Ronnie, and that was it. So for the longest time, we didn't have access to any Sylvester McCoy. And I was able to kind of get myself involved, and you can hear me talk about this quite a bit, get involved with the community who did all of the tape trading and stuff in our area. And why that was important, because that they were getting from the UK, probably not off air, but close enough, and it came over to the US. They'd be converted, the tapes would be converted from PAL to NTSC, and then from there, they'd be recorded multiple generations, sometimes down from where they came from. So I had that's not horrible copy of starting to get horrible, of season 25. And we had a guy, I think it's okay to at least give his first name. His name was Craig. And Craig, and trust me, even though I think a lot of people were just like, I would never pay for copies. When you wanted to see something, at least for me, I'd find a way. And he wouldn't give copies. He would sell them. He would sell the tape, and each one would be about maybe 25, maybe more. And he lived way the hell away from me. I don't even remember where he lives. But he would charge a lot of money if you, especially wanted to come out and get it. He'd like, well, I got to cover my gas and stuff. So he would charge, but I was the video guy for the University fan club, so I wanted to make sure that we had at our room parties and whatnot that we were able to watch new episodes of Doctor Who. It felt like it was my duty. I didn't have a job. I don't know how I was able to do this, but I was, and so I just started to get these, and there was something really fun about getting these stories. And yeah, I know there's a lot of people who are like, well, I would never pay. Fair enough. That sounds good. But what I loved about this was that it was able to see it, was able to, every time we got a new story, because we'd get it one story at a time, I don't know how long after they would air, sometimes maybe 3 months or something like that. And my friends, I had 2 friends named Roger, they would come over, and my mom would make pizza. We'd be down in the basement. We'd sit, watch pizza, watch new Doctor Who. Even 3 months after it aired in the UK, getting it, hardly anyone else was watching. And it was a lot of fun to do so. This particular tape, and it was one thing that was kind of nice about what Craig did, I guess, was that he didn't want to he wanted to fill out a tape. And I know a lot of people who are tape traders would do that. Not me. But anyway, so what he would do, he would fill out the tape, and there's stuff that was running around the time that he'd filled up with, such as Clown Court with Noel Edmond, and that had Sylvester McCoy on it. And so you had the segment from Clown Court, then you had the segment of Clown Court with the bloopers and the outtakes, that you learned that Sylvester McCoy could not say one line of dialogue without screwing it up. And we found that out later with the outtakes from the DVDs. And it was really, it was just so much fun, because now we're in a world that I had never been in before. Now we're looking at stuff that's given to me that isn't just Doctor Who, isn't stuff I'm seeing on PBS. I didn't know who Noel Edmonds was. All I know was that there is all this kind of comedy, and that a doctor in his costume was taking part in it. And I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. That was really neat. That was really cool. And then he filled it up with a copy of Invasion of the Dinosaurs, Episode 1, Invasion. Now, we'll save that for if we ever get around to the invasion of the dinosaurs. But this was one where he thought that this might have come from one of the recordings that were in color. There was a big rumor back in the day that Invasion of the Dinosaurs did exist in color, just like a lot of the other Pertwees that we only had in black and white in the BBC archive. But this one was so many gens down that the color signal was pretty much lost on it. But you could still see the green of the story is a green, right? Listen. Invasion of the Dinosaurs at Part 1, the Invasion, does not exist in color back then. It was gone by then. So we'll talk more about that if we ever get to that story on VHS. But he filled up the tape. Those are great memories. Those are really fun memories. Even if they weren't the best quality recordings ever, those were truly wonderful, wonderful memories. And like I said, every time that we'd get one of these, we would run it because we do monthly Whoniversity parties at a library. And the big selling point of this was to put on Doctor Who parties. People would show up in costumes. That went well. And then I always look at it, the main attraction was my video room. But, I mean, it was when there was something new. But, I mean, it was always about getting people together and talking and whatnot. And so we would do the Whoniversity party, and we started with Remembrance of the Daleks that Craig had given to someone else. That hooked people, and then that's when I started working with him, got Happiness Patrol, got Silver Nemesis, and ended with Greatest Show in the Galaxy, and showing that. But, the downfall of this stuff is, especially when you're paying for it, when people are like, well, can I get a copy? I don't know who you are. And I know that people are going to be like, well, that's what's wrong. That was what's wrong with fandom, is that people didn't share stuff. But, at the same time, when you are working really hard and you're putting up the money sometimes to do it, it's tough to just be like, oh, okay, go ahead, I guess, let's, you can have copies and whatnot. Because you work really hard to get these little inroads. And, after my era with Craig only lasted for season 25. Season 26 found somebody else who did not want money and got much better quality copies. But that's kind of the way tape trading works, is that you build your way up the ladder, so to speak. And you get so many people also asking, especially when it's new Doctor Who, it became very difficult to keep up with those requests anyway. And you just didn't want, it's like I just wanted to show it and go home. It's unfair. I'm not going to say it's not unfair, because, I know that a lot of people want copies of stuff, but it's just really hard when everybody wants something. And, there are people who gave me tapes for season 26 back in 1989, and I still haven't dubbed them. I think I probably still have the blank tapes, to be very honest. And that's not cool. That's not great. I'm not happy about that, but that's just the way it is. There was one person who kept bugging us so much, and that's another thing, folks. it's one thing to ask and be cool about it and come to an agreement. And I don't mean a financial one. I just mean coming to an agreement of like, this person seems cool. You just don't want to share it all over the place. There's other people who are just nonstop and they kind of get on your nerves and stuff. And there was one person and she just asked and asked and asked and asked. And so she's just like, can I please get a copy of Remembrance of the Daleks? And we were like, yes, we can do that. And she hands us a tape. And she's like, can I also get Silver Nemesis? And we're just like, are you kidding us? So we gave her Remembrance of the Daleks, which is the better of the two anyway. We gave it to her, just a copy from what we had. And then we gave her Silver Nemesis from the BBC One broadcast. And it has the BBC One ident, the continuity, goes into the opening credits. And once the opening credits, this is only for part 1, once the opening credits end, we hit on the fast forward, the search fast forward. So it just like everything sped up, but the picture was still there. And we did that for the entirety of part 1. And then when it got to the cliffhanger, we went back to regular play at normal speed. And then it goes into the end credits at normal speed. Now, folks, I'm like 15 years old, so don't get on me about being immature. I was immature. I was 15 years old, okay? Relax. But the thing is that it was really, to us, we were pissing ourselves with laughter when we did it, the three of us, Roger, and myself. We were just laughing our asses off. And, but the thing was, she asked for Remembrance of the Daleks mainly, and that was completely untouched. But then when she kind of did that sort of like, oh, and throw on Silver Nemesis too. Well, we only do an SP. So we only had room for one episode, and that's how we did it. She thanked us for Remembrance of the Daleks. She never commented on Silver Nemesis. Probably a good idea. But I think it was really funny. One other thing about Silver Nemesis that I really love is the fact that I love the Cybermen helmets. So this is my Silver Nemesis helmet. You can see it has the chrome on it. It has the special mouthpiece. It's utterly beautiful, isn't it? Except for one thing. It's broken. Now, you're all like, well, Greg, you're too rough when you're wearing your Cyberman helmet walking down the street. I truly am not. This came this way. I bought a number. You've seen one already on my Tomb of the Cybermen video. The gentleman who does this as you can see, he does a brilliant job. He does it at a good rate, but he didn't pack it all that well, and this one got severely damaged, and it included this coming off, which I poorly glued back on. And I reached out to him, and I'm like, may I get, like, can I get another one? Knowing that these are expensive, knowing that it costs a lot to ship, I offered actually to pay for another one. I wasn't like, just send it to me free, you owe it to me. I'm like, I will pay. I mean, if you don't want to pay, if you don't want me to pay the full amount, or if you do want me to pay, because it's not, he didn't do it on purpose, all right? He didn't do it on purpose. But I love these, and I don't want them damaged, and I want to get as many as he makes. And he said, nope, I will return this. I will send you another one. And I said, well, if you change your mind and you want some kind of money for it, let me know. And that was about a year ago. And I haven't really, I've reached out to him. It's not like he doesn't answer me. But I'm like, hey, what's going on with this? And it's just like, not a whole lot. He also was going to make some other kind, like an invasion style helmet, and I'm all about that. I'm like, what's going on? Can I get that? And that kind of seems to have stalled too. It's just a bummer. I'm not angry. I'm truly not angry, because this is something that I don't know how to fix the ear thing. I wouldn't know how to do that, but I love it all the same. I just want one that's really not broken. That's all. But I'm glad I have it. I'm glad I could show you all my my Silver Nemesis costume. Well, at least the helmet. You're not going to see the whole costume, because I don't have one. So as we talk about the release of Silver Nemesis on VHS, we always go back to DWM and DWB. Now, DWM 194, basically what they're saying is that there is going to be a special release for Silver Nemesis. This is from DWM 194. But this gets sidelined because this isn't the big news for release of video. The big news is 10th Planet is going to get a release in 1993, because they have episode 4. Episode 4 is returned on a Shabadan tape by a gentleman by the name of Roger K. Barrett. Okay? So, a couple things. We know the history to this, don't we? At the time, it was really exciting, wasn't it? That, and I didn't know what a Shabadan tape was. I didn't understand what that would look like or anything. In the years that followed, I met Roger K. Barrett. I know who Roger K. Barrett is. Roger K. Barrett is a friend of mine.
Roger Barrett does not exist.
And Paul Lee from Missing in Action, that Planet of the Daleks short prior to the run of episode 3. I'm friends with Paul Lee. I should get those two together, shouldn't I? I mean, because Paul Lee is talking about how he's angry that that Roger K. Barrett. Well, it wasn't really Paul Lee that was talking about it. He just kind of said that it was sick. Ian Levine, though, Ian was, member of the shots of his knuckles, all that stuff. But that's okay. Roger K. Barrett is actually a nice guy. There's a confusion with that maybe someday I can talk a little bit more about. But the guy who is Roger K. Barrett, it's a long story, but Roger K. Barrett's actually very nice. I will not reveal his name. He does not have 10th Planet 4 either. But that was the thing. And that was really a really interesting moment. And also in that DWM 194, they talk about a possible rumored release also of the Reign of Terror. And I know at one point that, like, with the invasion, having not all the episodes there and having linking narration, and that Reign of Terror eventually does get recorded narration, so does 10th Planet, but they don't release them. And I thought this is what that was. But that is not the case. What the article states is that there's also a rumor that episodes 4 and 5 of the Reign of Terror had been found, and that is why they were going to do a rush release of that also. Could you imagine having 2 of those releases because they were returned to the archive and they rushed them out? How cool that would have been. It would have been like Tomb of the Cybermen all over again. And it just, unfortunately, that's just not how it ended up, which is what it is. It's also interesting, though, that both of those stories, Reign of Terror and the 10th Planet, both have animated episodes now filling in the gaps. And if you would have told us that back in 1993, I think we would have believed more that the episodes would have been returned than the fact that someone would have animated missing episodes for us. Crazy how it changes, isn't it? Now then you get, so with 194, you get a picture of this lovely cover. DWM 195 is a really interesting interview, of all people, Eric Luskin. And that was conducted, that interview was conducted by American fan Tom Beck, who I'm also a friend with. I'm just a name dropper, what can I say? They're not really friends. I mean, I know Tom. I don't think he would actually know me if we saw each other face to face. We're friends on Facebook, though. But Tom, around that time, I believe, was working with a new United States Doctor Who fan club called Friends of Doctor Who. That was a Lionheart who was distributor of Doctor Who, Lionheart sanctioned Doctor Who fan club. The main Doctor Who fan club in America, Doctor Who Fan Club of America, as it was called, DWFCA, pretty much all but folded by that point. There wasn't really anything left. DWAS did try to do inroads in the U.S. and it never really quite caught on. But this interview that was conducted by Tom Beck really was Eric Luskin talking about doing the documentary and what it took to put it together. If you can track down that article, I might just put it in my Patreon. But if you can track it down, it's a very interesting read. I think the interesting part about it, that J&T was such a fan of the documentary. He really thought it turned out very well, that he went to his upper-ups at the BBC and he tried to get it on BBC One. He tried to get it to be played on BBC One. Now, they didn't want to do it because the documentary to them is too American. And it's interesting to think if that was still the case now, because the funny thing about that is that it is. It's very sensational in a lot of ways, especially when the way, it's very sensational journalism, very, U.S. journalism as far as I'm concerned. And it really hit me when I watched it again, starting off with, the first thing is, and I'm going to paraphrase, but it's a shot of John Nathan Turner in rehearsals for Silver Nemesis, and the camera's on him, and the voiceover is Eric Luskin, and paraphrasing, he's basically like, and then John Nathan Turner, producer for 9 years, is this his last year as producer of Doctor Who, or perhaps his last year as producer of Doctor Who? Kind of sensationalized. It's like soap opera almost. But then again, it's not too dissimilar from J&T, isn't it? Kind of a soap opera. I mean, he fed into it as much as they gave it to him. So I think that was kind of his element, though, wasn't it? But it was interesting that, that at least J&T tried to get a BBC broadcast of it. It would have been interesting to see how it worked. It's a great documentary regardless, and it also has some really interesting archive clips in there as well. I watched it again and I thought, God, I think this really stands up very well. DWB 110 talks about it in its schedule. That's really where it only talks about with a picture of its cover on there. You go to jump to DWB 113, and it devotes quite a bit of time to the story, and It's the usual sort of scalding review of the John Nathan Turner era, and I say that as someone who likes it. I understand that some of you watching, maybe the person who wrote the article, don't like it, don't like the story, don't like anything about it. Okay, fine, but to me it starts to become very samey, and I don't enjoy it. I really don't enjoy it that much. Just like the new series, I don't enjoy it when people are ripping on it all the time either. At the same time, I don't enjoy it when people have nothing but good things to say about it, because nothing is perfect. It's okay to not have a 100% positive opinion on something. At the same time, it really is tiring when all you do is go onto forums just to crap on something because you don't like it. If you don't like it, just stay away and stop watching it. Why do people keep watching it if you don't like it? That's the thing I don't understand. Sorry, boy, what a tandem there. And so the article continues on another page, and I might just not be smart. I could not find the rest of the article anywhere. So I don't know if the guy who wrote it got so angry he just kind of disappeared into oblivion and they just printed what they had, or am I missing a page or whatever else. But it was really strange that I couldn't find everything about it. They also talk about a little bit about the documentary itself because it's on the video release. And the way that I took it was not so much talking about the documentary, but talking about how they got an American company in, a broadcast company in, to document this J&T mess. And that's just kind of like, come on. Once again, come on. Once again, I actually really like Silver Nemesis. I can also understand why people may not like it, and I can see there's parts of it that aren't the greatest. And some of it's darn right confusing to me. But I still enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot more than other Doctor Who. Let's put it that way. So, your mileage may vary. I totally understand that. But one thing it did have was it had the DWB article in 113 had a very helpful breakdown of all of the edits in Silver Nemesis, like what was cut out or what was added, where the cuts take place and stuff. And that was really cool. I mean, you could create your own version really from that. And that was, I mean, it was like really nice. And I was almost going to say for once DWB was helpful. I love DWB. It was just the whole anti-JNT thing was not great for the publication, I believe. But DWB is probably some of my finest memories of talking about missing episodes, which we'll talk about some other time. So let's talk about the release itself, okay? Let's talk about this cover. What is this? I mean, it's interesting because clearly what they want to do is they want to create something that stands out from the range because it is different from the range. It's not the broadcast version of the story. At the same time, why can't you make it look nice? Just because something's in foil doesn't mean it's good. And over the years, I have seen so many beautiful pieces of art that has to do with Silver Nemesis. And the fact that we never got any of it because we got this cover for the VHS. And it's, I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't even know. What did I even write about it? Because maybe that will help me. Because I'm looking at it again, and, like Shada, they did kind of the similar thing to Shada, but that was much more tasteful. That was much more in tune with what it was. This is just, it's not great. I don't think it's great. I mean, for those of you who like it, good. But it just, the pictures are so small on it. I don't even know why it's done this way. I like the idea of the foil. And the Doctor Who logo is super small. But the Silver Nemesis logo is super big. I don't understand it. So I also wanted to look at the inside cover. And there isn't one on mine. And you can't, this isn't a bootleg. You don't just make foil covers as bootlegs. I just guess that either there wasn't one for this, or it would be harder to do a full foil like this and do a second side. I mean, I don't know anything about printing, especially printing from the 1990s. But there wasn't anything unless this was a reissue, which I don't think that's the case either. It's a regular, BBC tape. I don't know. But it talks about having the making of Doctor Who on there, and this was such a great release that it's just a shame that once again the cover to me lets it down. It just is like people who don't understand the brand put this out, and that was just a shame. And then of course the US cover for it isn't much better. It's all cardboard, and it doesn't have the foil to it, but it's the same god-awful design as this. I think the one thing that this probably gets compared to the most so, and this kind of throws my theory out also about the covers, because Curse of Fenric in 1991 got a lot of work done to it, where it was, I think Nicholas Mallet also was able to, the director was also able to work on the story, the re-edit. I think Mark Ayers came in, did some music for it and whatnot. Much more, I mean, it was, they did a lot to it and made a cohesive edit from it. I know at the time we thought, rumors abound that this was going to be like, it was going to be released as 5 episodes and it was going to be amazing and stuff like that. And all of season 26 overran so much. But so at the end, there wasn't nearly as much footage, but was cohesively put together. If I'm not mistaken about Silver Nemesis, is that this was entirely edited together by John Nathan Turner. I think when you watch this, and it's made with good intention and it's not bad, but you can tell that he doesn't have access to a lot of like new music or maybe even music cues, and stuff is kind of, some of the edits are kind of abrupt. Some of the music is kind of abruptly cut off. Overall, it's just not as special as Curse of Fenric. And Curse of Fenric, it's not overly special either. It's just a great release, and with a beautiful cover, and it's not the same. And that's the thing that I find really a shame about this, because they made this. They're like saying this is the 30th anniversary of the 25th anniversary special. Got a beautiful extra on it, but they didn't have the money for it. Perhaps since this year of Doctor Who releases, 1993, there were so many special releases, perhaps there just wasn't budget for it. And if we were going to, and it kind of feels like if we were going to get this at all, that's how it was going to be. I understand. I totally get it. But I'm just going to point it out that to me it just didn't feel as special, but it doesn't mean that it was any less good. And so I find it very interesting is that this extended version was not put onto the DVD release. The DVD release is interesting in that, normally they include a lot of that stuff, but they didn't for this. Instead, they included an extended scene package. But it sounds like, so it's like if you wanted to, you could create your own version. I mean, some of you are like, how? I don't edit video. I do, and I create my own versions of stuff. But the thing about that was that with this, they did not, for the extended scene package, the deleted scene package on the DVD, they did not include 2 scenes that were part of this, which, I don't know why or how, but I'm sure accidents happen. And so it omits 2 scenes and several instances of cut dialogue. And that can only be found now on this VHS release. And what is also unclear, there was a time that it was reported that where the BBC had kept all of their masters for the VHS releases, because there has to be masters for those that the duplication came from, those were all stored somewhere else, and that would include Shada, that would include, this, that flooded and all those masters were destroyed. And it was thought that this master for the extended Silver Nemesis was destroyed. But now it seems like perhaps that was never the case. In Germany, they released the entire run of Sylvester McCoy in one giant box set. And one of the extras on Silver Nemesis was this extended version, is from what I understand. And so it must exist. Now, funny enough, as I had mentioned, I had gotten a lot of stuff from Ian Levine. One of them was extended Silver Nemesis, and I had thought for the longest period of time that that was from the master video recording for the home video release. And I say that because he got one directly from Shada, and so that looked really nice, better than the VHS. But no, this was one that he had somebody work and edit something together, and I don't think it followed what this was. I think they did their own thing with it. So, but obviously, if it doesn't exist, it's easy enough to recreate. Also, if it does exist, it's probably a certainty that it will show up on the collection Blu-ray sets, because that's what they do now, and that's just how it is. So it's funny. It's funny how that works, but it was also interesting to hear, and we'll know soon enough. And maybe if somebody who's watching knows, they can put that rumor to rest. Is it the end of the world if it's missing? Of course not. But it's always interesting to know what exists and what doesn't exist, basically. Now, also talking about the DVD release, that it doesn't have that extended version. It also doesn't have the New Jersey Network documentary on it. which for some reason I thought it did. And I thought, oh, by now they would have been able to clear the Eric Sayward stuff. So it's not on here, and I was really surprised by that. But I can also understand that's that's a different company, and rights expire, and that stuff just isn't as easy as it sounds. So I hope that it's also on the collection when it comes out, but there's no guarantee of that, though, is there? I mean, rights and everything else. I'm sure that, not to put words into Eric Luskin's mouth, I'm sure he would love, though, to be able to help them out and release it, but who knows? Who knows how that's going to work? Also, what I'm surprised about, too, which I have on my poorer copy, VHS copy, doesn't have the continuities on here. At least I couldn't see that they had the continuities, the BBC One continuities on here. I love those. So, it just doesn't have them.
Remember the golden rule. Never try and bluff a Cyberman. Just run.
But speaking of these two, and there's not been a Blu-ray released yet for them, I wanted to, as always, take a moment and show the quality difference between this, and if I can find the off-air for it, I would do that as well. At least the off-air PBS version. You can't use the off-air from or the version I have from BBC One, because that's just so many gens down. That's not even a fair comparison. But we're going to take a look and see what Silver Nemesis has looked like through the years.
We want to talk to you. I don't know if you're familiar with Wagner's Ring des Nibelungen. Now we are the Supermen, but you are the giants. They're wonderful creatures.
Of course. But why should we form an alliance with you?
We had the leader once. He predicted your coming. Now together, we shall fulfill his vision and reign over this world.
Together, the cyber race requires no help from humans.
But a woman who is almost less than human now holds the statue.
But she's armed with the most primitive toys.
You insult us.
Of course not. Whatever your unfortunate vulnerability, doesn't affect us. We can remove her for you.
We accept. Destroy the woman and her servant, and we will divide the planet into your slave groups and ours.
Good.
But remember, betrayal will be fatal. We are invincible to your weapons.
I like it. I love the story. It has its faults, but I think it's fun. And I just love the wandering around the hills, the valleys, and the castles. It's just a kind of a fun summer story, if you ask me. That being said, hopefully you enjoyed everything that we talked about today. If you want to share any of your memories of getting this release, please do so, because it's fun. And I ended up getting my copy much later, when I was catching up with the great PAL catch-up to get all these behind me. And as always, if you are interested, please support me on Patreon. There's all the documents that I use, all the scans and everything I do put on Patreon at a different level, of course. But you can see what's there. You can see what is available at your price point. But it's, certainly we like to share out stuff and maybe share unique footage and unique videos that we're not going to put out on YouTube. So check it out, please. I'd really appreciate it. And as always, boy, Silver Nemesis, part of season 25. If you want to leave me a comment, just don't yell at me for liking Sylvester McCoy. That's all I'm going to say. We all can enjoy Doctor Who. We all have, as you can see, there's a lot of it behind me, so we can all enjoy plenty of different eras.
And there are more space adventures on these BBC videos.